Welcome back. In the last video, we built the CSR pyramid. Now let's widen the lens and ask what dimensions CSR actually has. Here's the important idea. CSR is not one thing, but a bundle. The concept has evolved over time, been redefined, and steadily broadened in scope. And as it broadened, it picked up more and more dimensions. The slide lists them: stakeholders, social, economic, voluntariness, and environmental. And it goes further, naming the core dimensions that recur across almost every serious definition of CSR: economic, ethical, social, stakeholders, sustainability, and discretionary considerations. Why does this matter? Because whenever two people argue about whether a company is responsible, they're often each looking at a different dimension. One means environmental footprint, another means how it treats workers, a third means its charitable giving. And each can be completely sincere while reaching the opposite conclusion, simply because they're weighing different things. Recognizing that CSR is multidimensional is the first step to having a precise conversation about it, and later to measuring it without talking past one another. Notice too the word voluntariness sitting in that list of dimensions. It's a reminder of the classical view from the last video, that CSR means going beyond the law of your own accord. But keep an eye on it, because as the concept has evolved and its scope has broadened, that voluntary character has come under real pressure, with more and more of it being written into regulation. The dimensions themselves are not fixed. They shift as society's expectations of business shift. Quick aside, enjoying this so far? Then consider subscribing so you stay in the loop as new episodes are released. Now, how do firms actually turn these dimensions into action? Through CSR strategies. And the key principle is that stakeholders' expectations determine which practices a firm adopts. CSR is worked out in response to the people who have a stake in the company. Over the next 3 slides, we'll walk through the most common strategy areas, grouped by stakeholder. Let's take the first 3. 1. Shareholder interests. Protecting shareholders' legal revenues, pursuing the sustainable development of the corporation, allowing participation in decision-making, and managing the shareholder relationship well. 2. Environmental preservation. Conserving energy and resources, cutting emissions, protecting biodiversity and ecology, running proper environmental management, and building green design into products. And 3, the well-being of the local community, thinking about a project's impact on the community and getting genuinely involved in it. Notice how already the strategy reaches from the boardroom to the natural environment to the neighborhood. And notice something important about the very first item on this list. Shareholders appear here too. CSR done well doesn't treat shareholders as the enemy of responsibility. It treats their legitimate interests and the sustainable, long-term development of the company as one stakeholder concern among several. That's a more balanced picture than the caricature of CSR as being anti-business. Let's continue down the list of stakeholders. The 4th area is employee interests, and this is a rich one. It covers the occupational health and safety of employees, their wages and welfare, security of employment, education and training, freedom of association and collective bargaining, and broadly, caring for all employees. That's a serious agenda. It treats the workforce not as a cost to be minimized, but as a group whose interests the firm is responsible for. The 5th area is customer interests, the quality and safety of the product, and customer service and satisfaction. A responsible firm doesn't sell something unsafe or shoddy and walk away. And the 6th is supplier or partner interests, enhancing communication and collaboration with suppliers and partners, and managing the supply chain responsibly. There's that supply chain theme again. Responsibility doesn't stop at your own factory gate. It runs up and down the chain of firms you work with. Here are the remaining strategy areas, and they take us outward into the firm's relationship with the wider system. 7. Government commitment, compliance management, providing employment opportunities, contributing technology, innovation and industry development, and engaging in urban development programs. 8. fair operant programs. 8. Fair operation and competition. Ethical operation, risk management, competing fairly rather than through dirty tricks, and protecting intellectual property rights. 9. NGO practices, pursuing a social and public service strategy and being open through media disclosure. And finally, 10th, CSR institutional arrangement, actually building CSR into the organization through a dedicated CSR institutional structure, through CSR research, and through CSR communication. That last point is easy to overlook but crucial. For CSR to be real, a company has to institutionalize it, give it people, structures, and a voice, rather than leaving it as a vague good intention. If those were the strategies, what are the actual issues CSR has to grapple with? This slide gives the canonical list, and it's worth reading slowly because it maps the whole territory. The key CSR issues are environmental management, eco-efficiency, doing more with less resource and less waste, responsible sourcing, stakeholder engagement, labor standards and working conditions, employee and community relations, social equity, gender balance and human rights, and finally, good governance and anti-corruption measures. Look at the span of that list. It runs from the environmental, emissions and resources, through the social, labor, equity, human rights, all the way to governance, how the company is run and whether it's honest. That environmental social governance triad is not an accident. Keep it in mind because when we get to ESG ratings later in the course, these are precisely the issues those ratings are trying to score. This slide continues the theme of CSR issues visually on screen. The takeaway to hold on to is simply how broad and interconnected these issues are. Environmental, social, and governance concerns don't sit in neat separate boxes. They overlap and reinforce one another. A company that treats its workers badly often cuts environmental corners too, and weak governance tends to sit underneath both. Think about it. If the people running a company aren't held accountable, if the governance is weak, then there's little to stop them from neglecting safety, from polluting, or from squeezing suppliers. Governance is, in a sense, the layer that makes the other layers stick. So rather than a checklist to tick off item by item, think of CSR issues as a web, where pulling on one strand moves the others. That interconnectedness is also why a company can't credibly be excellent on one dimension while being terrible on another. A firm with a glossy environmental report but a record of corruption isn't really responsible. It's selectively presentable. Hold on to that distinction between genuine, joined-up responsibility and its cosmetic imitation. It's the seed of the whole greenwashing debate we'll meet later. So far, we've described what CSR is and what firms do. But here's a sharper question. Why do companies bother at all, especially when it costs them? That's where driving forces come in, and the definition on the slide is pointed. Driving forces are what push companies towards CSR activities, even when, left to themselves and under other conditions, they wouldn't take such initiatives. In other words, these are the pressures that make CSR happen. Let's take the first three. Market drivers, the attitudes of a firm's own consumers, employees, investors, suppliers, and customers. If your market cares, you care. Social drivers, pressure, you care. Social drivers, pressure from NGOs, media attention, general social expectations, and business coalitions. The collective pressure of society, which is worth treating as its own force. And governmental drivers. Traditionally, CSR was defined as voluntary, but in recent years, many governments have launched policy initiatives to actively encourage and promote it. Watch that last one. The voluntary is quietly becoming the required. Two more driving forces complete the picture, and both are large-scale. The first is globalization, and here the key players are multinational enterprises. As companies operate across many countries, they push toward the standardization of CSR practices worldwide. A global firm tends to carry a common set of standards into every market it enters, spreading them almost as a side effect of doing business everywhere. The second is institutional. CSR depends at least institutional. CSR depends at least partly on the institutional context of a particular country. We've already seen how governments, civil society organizations, and international bodies drive it. But the slide adds a striking, often forgotten example: religion. As an informal institution, religion has long shaped the role that businesses are expected to play in society. Ideas about fair dealing, charity, and stewardship run very deep and long predate the term CSR. So the forces driving CSR range from the immediate pressure of your customers all the way to the deep institutional and even religious fabric of the society a firm operates in. Let's pull this video together. We saw that CSR is genuinely multidimensional: economic, social, environmental, ethical, stakeholder-focused, and sustainability-oriented all at once. We walk through the concrete strategies firms use, stakeholder by stakeholder, from shareholders and the environment to employees, customers, suppliers, government, fair competition, NGOs, and the institutionalization of CSR itself. We surveyed the core issues, that environmental social governance web, and we asked the hard question of why firms act at all, identifying the driving forces: market, social, governmental, globalization, and institutional. In the next video, we turn to the bottom line, literally. We'll examine the business case for CSR, what it costs, why the cost-benefit ratio is the central barrier to implementation, and what companies and society actually gain in return. See you there. We'll leave it there. Many thanks for watching. A subscribe helps the channel and makes sure you don't miss what comes next.